Rachel swore the affair was over. She said it with just enough tremble in her voice to seem sincere, clutching Marcus's hand across the kitchen table while the evening sun slanted in through the windows. Her eyes, those carefully made-up hazel eyes, held his gaze a beat too long, like she wanted to believe her own words. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't accuse. He only nodded, lips pressed into a neutral line. "Then it's done," he'd said softly. "Let's not dwell. Our anniversary's coming up. Let's celebrate properly this time." And just like that, she smiled. That radiant, practiced smile that had charmed him once and now felt like theater. She leaned in and kissed his cheek, murmuring how much it meant to her that he was giving them another chance. But Marcus had already made up his mind. By then, he had watched the messages unfold between Rachel and her lover, Dylan, the man she claimed she'd cut off. The man whose name she still used in coded late-night chats under the guise of work stress or catching up with an old friend. Marcus knew. He always asked questions he already had the answers to. It was a game he played quietly, patiently. That evening, as Rachel showered upstairs, humming to herself, he unlocked her phone. She never suspected. Her arrogance shielded her. She believed her charm was enough to keep him blind. Marcus opened a new message thread and began typing. "Meet me, one more time, just us, Thursday night, same place where it started." He signed it with a familiar heart emoji Rachel always used. Then he deleted the message, cleared the log, and returned the phone to its place beside her wine glass. He booked the restaurant the next morning, a private booth in the corner of a dimly lit high-end place with enough distance from other tables to give the illusion of privacy, but close enough that whispers could drift. The host recognized him. "Anniversary?" she asked as she led him to the booth. He smiled politely. "A celebration of honesty." Rachel didn't suspect a thing. That Thursday evening, she walked into the restaurant wearing a silk champagne dress and a fresh lie painted on her lips. She greeted Marcus with a kiss and a radiant, "Happy anniversary, baby." He stood as she sat. "You look beautiful," he said, voice steady. Then he glanced at the empty seat beside her. "Let's wait a moment," Marcus added. "There's someone else joining us tonight." Rachel blinked, and for the first time in weeks, Marcus saw real fear flicker behind her eyes. Rachel's smile froze like a photograph that had lingered on the screen a second too long. Her hand hovered above her wine glass, then slowly curled around the stem as if it could anchor her. Marcus watched her closely. Not with the fury of a betrayed husband, but the calm of a man who had rehearsed this moment frame by frame in his mind. She tilted her head, trying to keep the mood light. "Someone else? I thought this was just us tonight." "It was supposed to be," Marcus said, smoothly unfolding his napkin and laying it across his lap. "But sometimes things change. And sometimes people don't." Her brow furrowed, subtle but telling. The control she prided herself on had started to slip. The restaurant around them buzzed with quiet laughter, low conversation, the clink of cutlery. A jazz trio played softly in the background, their saxophone and piano weaving through the air like smoke. Candlelight flickered on the white linen tablecloth, dancing in Marcus's wine-dark eyes. Rachel sat straighter, crossing one leg over the other with deliberate poise. "Who's joining us?" she asked, her voice honeyed, eyes narrowing just slightly. Marcus swirled his wine, letting the silence stretch. "Just someone I thought you'd like to see again. It's been a while, hasn't it?" Rachel's hand twitched. "You invited someone from my side?" Marcus's smile was subtle, calculated. "From your side?" "No, more like your shadow." She blinked once, twice. Her breath caught. He didn't need to say Dylan's name. She knew. Before she could form another excuse, the maitre d' reappeared, leading a man in a tailored jacket and jeans through the dining area. Dylan's stride was confident, oblivious, like a man walking into a date, not a reckoning. Rachel turned slowly, her face draining of color as Dylan approached the table with an easy grin. "Hey," Dylan said, flashing a boyish smile meant for her, not noticing Marcus right away. "You look..." His voice trailed off as he finally registered the third place setting, and then Marcus. The color drained from Dylan's face like water down a sink. "Dylan," Marcus said calmly, gesturing to the empty seat across from him. "Glad you could make it. Sit down." Rachel's hand shot out instinctively, as if to ward off the moment itself. Marcus, I can explain. He raised a finger, not in anger, not in haste, just a silent command for quiet. She obeyed. Dylan looked like he wanted to turn and walk out, but his legs didn't move. The air felt heavier now, saturated with tension so thick it pressed against the windows. The other tables had grown quieter too, the hush of curiosity beginning to ripple outward. Rachel's composure was unraveling in slow motion. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. This isn't what you think. No, Marcus asked. He turned to Dylan, never breaking eye contact. How long have you been seeing my wife? Dylan sputtered, eyes flicking from Rachel to Marcus. I didn't know she was still with you. She said it was over. Months ago. Rachel's jaw clenched, but Marcus caught the flicker of panic in her eyes. She said the same thing to me, Marcus replied evenly. Funny how things get lost in translation. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, Dylan said quickly, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. I wouldn't have come if I knew. Oh, but you did come, Marcus interrupted, calm as a surgeon. That's the thing about invitations. They reveal a lot about the sender and the recipient. Rachel's voice turned sharp. Marcus, stop this. This isn't the place. No, he said, picking up his glass. This is exactly the place. He raised it slightly, his tone quiet but firm. To truth. However late it arrives. Rachel flinched, the weight of her own secrets pressing down on her like a collapsing ceiling. Dylan looked like he wanted to disappear, and Marcus just watched, savoring the silent implosion of everything she thought she'd kept hidden. He didn't gloat. Oh, he didn't yell. He just waited for them to catch up to a truth he had long since accepted. And the evening wasn't over yet. Dylan sat rigid in his seat, clearly struggling to find his footing. His confidence, once worn like armor, had slipped off the moment he recognized Marcus. Now he looked exposed, caught somewhere between shame and confusion, unsure where to place his hands or his eyes. Rachel, on the other hand, was trying to rebuild her facade in real time. She straightened her posture, squared her shoulders, and attempted a polite smile, though it faltered around the edges. Her mind raced, calculating a dozen escape routes from a situation she could no longer control. Marcus, however, didn't press, not yet. Instead, he gave them both a moment, watching as they squirmed in silence. The jazz music faded into the background, replaced in his mind by the cadence of their shallow breathing. He could feel the shift in the room, waitstaff pausing at the edges of their periphery, other diners casting sidewise glances. This wasn't just a dinner anymore. This was a carefully constructed theater, and Marcus was the quiet playwright watching his final act unfold. So, he said finally, his voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel, how long has this been going on? I'd love to hear it from either of you, or both. You choose. Rachel's lips parted, then closed again. It was Dylan who spoke first. It started last year, he admitted, eyes dropping to the table. At first it wasn't serious. I didn't know she was still with you. She said things had ended. She lies well, doesn't she? Marcus said calmly, never taking his eyes off Rachel. She always has. But you'd be surprised how much you learn when you ask the same question 3 different ways. Rachel reached across the table, a weak attempt to reclaim familiarity. Marcus, please. This isn't you. You don't do scenes. He chuckled softly, though there was no amusement in it. You're right. I don't scream. I don't throw drinks. I plan. And I wait. And when the time is right, I let the truth speak for itself. Rachel turned to Dylan with a glare that barely masked her desperation. I told you not to respond to that message. You told me you wanted to see me, Dylan said, his confusion now giving way to anger. It came from your number, Rachel. What was I supposed to think? Exactly what I intended you to think, Marcus said. That this was just another one of your little rendezvous. Only tonight, it's not in secret. Tonight, I get to watch you both squirm. She tried to regain control. You tricked him. You used my phone. Marcus tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. I had to be sure. And really, I thought you'd appreciate the symmetry. An affair born in deceit, exposed with the same device used to carry it on. Rachel's composure cracked, her voice pitched higher now, more breath than words. I never meant for you to find out like this. Marcus leaned forward, placing his elbows on the table, his tone suddenly low and intimate, almost tender, if not for the blade hidden beneath. But you did mean for me never to find out. That's the truth. She looked away. Dylan, hands now folded tightly in his lap, muttered, I'm sorry, man, I really didn't know. I wouldn't have. You did, Marcus interrupted, and you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you're sitting here, caught. Let's not pretend otherwise. There was a pause, heavy, Marcus reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thin, sealed envelope. He laid it on the table gently, just beside the flickering candlelight. "These are yours, Rachel. I figured it was best to handle this in the same way you handled everything, with silence and a signature." Her fingers trembled as she looked at it. "Divorce papers, neatly prepared. Irrevocable." Marcus stood. The booth creaked slightly under the shift of weight. He smoothed his shirt, then looked at them both one last time. "To honesty," he said again, raising his glass briefly. Then he turned and walked out, slow, steady, the ghost of his marriage dissolving behind him. The sound of Marcus's footsteps faded as he walked away, leaving behind the wreckage of a marriage that had moments ago worn the mask of celebration. Rachel stared blankly at the envelope on the table, her carefully constructed world unraveling thread by thread. The crisp edges of the divorce papers seemed to glow under the candlelight, a silent indictment that didn't need to scream. It just sat there, neat, cold, final. Dylan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, one hand slowly rubbing the back of his neck. What the hell just happened?" Rachel didn't answer. Her gaze was locked on the envelope as though hoping it would vanish if she stared long enough. But the moment wouldn't pass. The restaurant no longer felt warm and intimate. It had turned into a stage. Their table, once meant for celebration, now felt like an exhibit of shame. All around them, the air had changed. Conversations at nearby tables had quieted, and though no one stared openly, there was a tension in the atmosphere, a collective awareness that something had just occurred. A betrayal had been dragged into the open, dressed in candlelight and white linen. Even the jazz band had softened their tune, as if they, too, sensed the collapse. Rachel finally spoke, her voice hollow. He knew for weeks, maybe months. Dylan didn't respond immediately. He looked toward the entrance where Marcus had vanished, then back at Rachel. "Why didn't you tell me he still lived with you? Why keep it going?" she snapped then, not loudly but sharply, like glass cracking. "Because it wasn't supposed to get this far. It was supposed to be simple, an escape, a secret, not this." Dylan frowned, his confidence dissolving further. "So I was your fantasy getaway? Just a little thrill to distract from your husband?" Her eyes flicked toward him, tired now, not defensive, just exposed. "You knew I was married. Don't pretend you didn't like being the secret." He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Not like this, Rachel. I didn't sign up to be publicly humiliated by your husband in a five-star restaurant. Jesus." Rachel slumped back into her seat. The glamour she wore like armor had faded, revealing what was left underneath. A woman who thought she could control every variable, only to realize she'd never understood the game to begin with. She reached for the wine glass Marcus had barely touched and finished it in a single, ungraceful gulp. Dylan stood, brushing his hands off on his jacket as if ridding himself of the evening. "I'm leaving. This was a mistake." She looked up at him, the words on her tongue but too tired to form them. Maybe she had thought he would stay, that after everything he might comfort her or offer some shared blame. But Dylan wasn't Marcus. He wasn't built for aftermaths. He left without a backward glance. The waiter appeared quietly, placing the bill on the table without a word. Rachel reached for it out of instinct, only to realize the corner had already been marked. Hey, Marcus had handled everything, down to the final detail. Of course he had. He always did. The room felt colder now. The laughter from other tables resumed gradually, polite and distant, like the world had decided to move on. Rachel remained seated in that booth, glamorous in appearance, shattered beneath the surface. She opened the envelope at last, scanning the pages with a trembling hand. No accusations, no venom, just terms. Clean, quiet, irrefutable. In the final clause, handwritten in the margin, was a note for Marcus. "I never needed to catch you in the act. I just needed you to admit it to someone other than me." The pen slipped from her fingers. There would be no negotiation, no second chances. His fallout. The night air outside the restaurant was cool, tinged with the faint scent of jasmine from the planters near the valet stand. Marcus didn't rush as he walked to his car. Every step felt measured, final, like the closing of a door that had creaked on its hinges for far too long. He slipped into the driver's seat, started the engine, and let the soft hum of classical music from the radio fill the silence. But he didn't drive away immediately. He just sat there, hands on the wheel, breathing deeply, letting the weight of everything settle. Inside the restaurant, Rachel remained in the booth long after the wine glasses had been cleared and the dessert menus offered to other tables. Her dress, once a symbol of elegance, now felt like a costume she couldn't peel off. Every person who passed by seemed to glance at her, even if just for a moment. And she could feel it. That quiet hum of judgment, the kind of attention that made her skin itch. It was no longer admiration, it was pity. Or worse, satisfaction. She looked down at the divorce papers again. Not a single tear had come. She couldn't cry. Not because she wasn't hurt, but because the magnitude of what had just occurred hadn't yet settled into grief. It was still too surreal, too precise. Marcus hadn't exploded. He hadn't begged or raged. He had dismantled her lies with the same calm precision he used to solve problems at work. That, somehow, hurt more than any scene she had imagined. Dylan had long gone, and with him the illusion that she'd be rescued. There would be no late-night calls or whispered apologies. Whatever fantasy she had crafted around him collapsed the moment he stood up and walked out without even offering her a hand. Marcus, on the other hand, had left something far more lasting than words. He had seized the narrative and flipped it on its head, not with shouting, not with ultimatums, but with presence, with timing, and with truth. At the exit of the parking garage, Marcus finally pulled away into the city night. The streetlights cast golden glows along the road ahead, his path open, quiet, free. He didn't look back, and he didn't need to, because sometimes the last word isn't spoken, it's lived.